Welcome to the new podcast, In the Garden with Susan. I'm your host, Susan Ladner. I will aim to bring you top quality information on how to save open pollinated seeds, grow a garden, and preserve what you grow. Every Wednesday, I'll be sharing practical tips and techniques to help you on your journey to food security. Join me as I preserve the abundance of produce that my garden provides. Learn new ways of putting food away for the winter and some old ways that are from another century. You can find this podcast on Shopify and at my website. Come on, let's go wander down to the garden and awaken the dreams, history, and love that is held inside every seed. Hello, and welcome to another edition of In the Garden with Susan. Today, we are taking a little step away from using the herbs in making natural remedies and some of the different ways to take some of the herbs in the garden and put them away for winter. So today, this is something that probably most of my listeners, if you are gardeners, have. And you probably have lots of them, and some of you may have them everywhere, like me. I have these in my woodshed. I have them in my Jeep. I have them in my porch. I have them spread out all around in my house. They're everywhere. I still even have them laying around in the garden. There's tons of them, but a hard frost hit them. I'm not sure if anyone can guess what it is. Well, you already know because you see the episode title. It is green tomatoes. So I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was talking about how she has some cherry tomato size green tomatoes. And it got me thinking, like, I know that there's a few things. I've pickled green tomatoes before. I have, I, that's, I think, all I've done with green tomatoes, actually. I've saved some of the storage ones. I've wrapped them in newspaper and I've kept them into the winter. I used to have a variety called, I believe it was Red In or Yellow In, Red Out. It was some odd name like that. And this year I grew golden treasures. I have a few storage tomatoes that I'm going to pull through winter. However, what do we do with all these green tomatoes? I don't really ever think about it. Sometimes I try and let as many of them turn red as I can, and I throw them all in a big pot and I make them into a sauce. Some of them will hit the compost pile. It's just really what to do with them. One year I made the pickles two different ways. I have done them in wedges and I've done the pickles in slices. And I like the slices so much more because you can put them into sandwiches. They're way more versatile. So it got me thinking. I thought I'm going to do a podcast about the green tomatoes because this is something that I wanted to do a deep dive into researching and learn more about what to do with them. And so green tomatoes have a fascinating culinary history, often stemming from times when tomatoes were harvested before they could ripen, either due to weather limitations or to save crops from early frost. They were historically used in the American South, particularly during the Great Depression when food was minimized and households found creative ways to use what was available. Fried green tomatoes became a popular dish during this time, breaded and fried to create a flavorful, crispy side. The culinary use of green tomatoes extends beyond frying. In Eastern European cuisine, green tomatoes are commonly pickled, providing a tangy, crunchy addition to meals. This practice likely spread from the regions of Russia and the Balkans, where fermenting and pickling were essential for preserving food for the long winters. Green tomatoes have also been used in relishes, jams, and chutneys across the globe, allowing cooks to experience with both savory and sweet preparations. More recently, green tomatoes have enjoyed a revival in upscale and farm to table restaurants, appreciated for their unique acidity, firm texture, and versatility in salads, salsas, and even as a unique pasta sauce base. This journey highlights how green tomatoes, once a necessity-driven ingredient, have become an appreciated culinary choice. And I wanted to look at some of the recipes, how I want to start with dinner recipes, really. Like, what can we make for dinner with a green tomato? And the first thing I found was a fried green tomato BLT sandwich. And I will, as usual, if anyone wants to look at any of the recipes or any of this information, it will be in a blog on my website. And so to make the fried green tomato sandwich, you coat the tomato slices in cornmeal or breadcrumbs and fry until golden and crispy, and build a sandwich with whatever you'd like on there. And then we have a green tomato curry, and this has green tomatoes, coconut milk, curry spices, onion, garlic, and ginger. And you just mix that all up, cook it, and serve it over rice. And that actually sounds interesting. There is green tomato and chickpea stew, which has green tomatoes, chickpeas, onion, garlic, spinach, and spices, and that makes a nice hearty warming stew. There's also a recipe for green tomato pasta sauce, and I find this extremely interesting. I'd actually like to make it, even to just taste how that will be. That's something I would never even think of, making a pasta sauce from green tomatoes. I also found a baked green tomato casserole, and this has green tomatoes, breadcrumbs, cheese, onion, garlic, and fresh herbs. And you layer the sliced green tomatoes in a baking dish with breadcrumbs, cheese, and seasoning. Repeat the layers, ending with breadcrumbs and the cheese on top. And you bake until golden and bubbly. There's also a recipe for stuffed green tomatoes, and then a green tomato salsa verde for tacos or burrito bowls. So those are some of the recipes that you can do for dinner. And I also, here we'll just go through. I do have the exact recipes. If anyone wants to look at the blog and follow a recipe, they can go there. But I'm not going to read them all out because it's just so complex. Now, I wanted to ask, because I am a vegan, I wanted to, because I am a vegan, most of those recipes all seem like they were mostly vegan. So I wanted to ask if there's any meat recipes for those who are not vegan. And I found a green tomato and sausage pasta, a green tomato chicken parmesan that's made with chicken, of course. There's a green tomato and beef stew. And I'm just letting everyone know, I have no idea how these things are going to taste. I don't even know if they'll be good. I do know that when I pickled the green tomatoes in slices, I really enjoyed them in sandwiches. I always wanted to do fried green tomatoes, and I just never really got around to it. I wanted to look at some recipes that were unique for using green tomatoes. And there was a green tomato and shrimp gumbo. And then that's quite a big recipe. It's got lots in there. And this one here is a green tomato pizza with goat cheese. So you're basically you're slicing, you've got the green tomato sliced up on top, and it's baked. So yeah, that's interesting. This could be a whole lot of interesting ways to use green tomatoes if these things are good. I also found a green tomato and pork taco. Mm. And then green tomato risotto with parmesan and thyme. And that actually, with the 2 cups of rice, it also has 2 cups of green tomatoes in there. So I wanted to look at some unique vegan recipes, and there was a green tomato and chickpea kofta. And I don't know too much about what those are. It's got 2 green tomatoes, chickpeas, parsley, garlic, breadcrumbs, tahini, cumin, coriander. It looks like it's basically you just fry it all together and serve with pita bread and a salad. There is a green tomato and coconut dal, and that is made with red lentils and the green tomatoes. That might be really good. A green tomato and avocado taco with spicy black beans. So, what this sort of is seeming like as I went through these recipes, it's almost looking like any place that you could make something with a red tomato, you could substitute with the green tomato. I'm just not sure how I am with the flavor of green tomatoes. Because I really I've never really gotten into them. I also found a recipe for green tomato and sweet potato gratin, a green tomato and tofu stir fry with peanut sauce. It might be good. I do love peanut sauce. And so that's pretty much the recipes for meals that I could find. And now what I like to do is I like to preserve things. Like there's only so many you can't be eating green tomatoes for dinner every night. So how can we be putting some of these tomatoes into jars for the winter? I found a green tomato chutney, which looks like it's a basic chutney with 4 cups of green tomatoes, 1 cup of onion, 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, 1 cup of brown sugar, half a cup of raisins, 2 cloves of garlic, ginger, salt, mustard seeds, cinnamon, and cloves. And you put that in a water bath, and then you have that preserved and put away on your shelf stable as some shelf stable food. There's the pickled green tomatoes, and this is what I have done this twice. I really have to say that when I made it in wedges, I did not like it. There was just, I'm not sure what it was about it. I did not find it appealing. I found it weird to eat, and I didn't really like it. So maybe my listeners, maybe you guys will like it like that. But when I sliced it, I preferred it a lot more. And so you can just take 2 pounds of green tomatoes sliced or quartered, a cup and a half of white vinegar, water, salt, sugar, garlic, black peppercorns, mustard seeds, dill seeds optional, and fresh dill sprigs, which is optional. And if anyone is like me in their garden, I have a whole bunch of volunteer dill that's actually still growing out there and doing well. I was out harvesting spinach last night I was making a curry, and I dug up some carrots and harvested spinach, and I could not believe all the dill that's growing everywhere. There's also a recipe here for green tomato relish, which is 5 cups of green tomato, 1 bell pepper, 1 onion, vinegar, sugar, salt, mustard seeds, turmeric, and celery seeds. And that would be something good to make for those that still have peppers hanging around like I do. And then there is a green tomato salsa verde, and that is 4 cups of chopped green tomatoes, half a cup of onion, 2 garlic cloves, 2 jalapenos, quarter cup of fresh cilantro, 1 cup of white vinegar. And that sounds like something that I would like to make. I like things like that because then you have a nice salsa. Like, who doesn't like salsa? And this one is interesting. I don't think I can wrap my head around it. I know there is tomato jam, and it just does not sound appealing to me to have tomato jam. And so here we have a green tomato jam that has 4 cups of green tomatoes, 3 cups of sugar, 1 tablespoon of lemon zest, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a teaspoon of ground ginger is optional. That's a lot of sugar. I just don't know how I feel about that recipe. And I just I don't think I don't think tomato jam anything really works for me. So looking at when we have them, if we don't want to preserve them and we want to put them away and see how long we can have them to eat, how are we going to preserve them? I'd like to know how to store them for longer use. I usually what happens, I just keep them in whatever container they're in, buckets, bins, cardboard boxes, until I have to get rid of them, or they turn red and then I start throwing things in the pot. I have before wrapped. I did this a lot, especially in Ontario on the farm. I did wrap them in newspaper, each individual tomato, and I stored them down in the root cellar, well, the basement, and that worked well. Like, we had tomatoes coming, I think it was even till around Christmas. So how to first we got to look at how to harvest them. So the timing for harvesting green tomatoes is before the first frost, as cold temperatures can damage them. And a good rule of thumb is to start harvesting when the temperatures regularly dip down to about 13 degrees Celsius at night. And you want to be looking for firm tomatoes with smooth skin, free from blemishes, soft spots, or signs of disease. And it is fine if they have a slight blush of pink or yellow. And these are the ones that are going to ripen indoors. And you'll want to use garden shears or scissors to snip the tomatoes from the vine, leaving a small portion of the stem attached, as this prevents injury to the tomato and helps them to store longer. Now, storing for immediate ripening, you're going to keep the tomatoes at room temperature between 18 degrees and 21 degrees if you'd like them to ripen within 1 to 2 weeks. Now, you can place the tomatoes stem side down in a single layer, avoiding direct sunlight, and check them daily, as some may ripen sooner than others. And you do have the option to speed up ripening by placing them in a paper bag with a ripe banana or apple, and the ethylene gas produced by these fruits will promote ripening. And so this sort of goes against, I think, the common thought. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I think I've even read it, that if you want your tomatoes to ripen, you put them in the sun, have them in a sunny window, put them somewhere sunny. And I've always thought that was interesting, because in the place I'm at now and the last place I was at, I did not have a sunny window, and they didn't receive. As soon as I brought them in, they weren't getting any direct sunlight whatsoever, and I still have tomatoes ripening. So it's kind of interesting here that this information that I found is saying to avoid direct sunlight, which is good news for anybody that thinks they really need to have direct sunlight for their tomatoes to turn red and ripen. Now, if you want to store them to delay ripening, for longer term storage, you want to keep the tomatoes in a cool, dark location that is between 10 degrees and 13 degrees Celsius, such as a cellar or an unheated pantry, and this will slow the ripening process. You want to wrap each tomato individually in newspaper or brown paper bag or brown paper to prevent them from touching and reduce bruising. Then you'll place them in a single layer in a cardboard or wooden box. And at cooler temperatures, tomatoes can last several weeks to even a few months. And check weekly to remove any tomatoes that may have started to ripen or spoil. And that's quite a chore, let me tell you that. When you have a lot of these tomatoes wrapped, like what I just remember going down into the basement and unwrapping things and looking, and it it was quite time consuming, but when you do want those, that, like, they're so much better than the store. I actually I don't really buy too many tomatoes in the winter just because they're so flavorless, and your own tomatoes that are ripened in that way, they taste, they really amazing. Even though the texture is a little bit different, they still are so much better than what you can get at the store. Um, Now, freezing green tomatoes. This is an interesting one. You can wash and dry the tomatoes and then slice or chop and lay the pieces in a single layer on a baking sheet and freeze until solid, and then transfer to freezer safe bags or containers, removing as much air as possible. And frozen green tomatoes work best in cooked dishes as freezing alters their texture. So that's, I think, for the adventurous people. If anyone's ever done this, and if any of my listeners eat a lot of green tomatoes or have made a lot of dishes with them, I'd love to hear from you and what you think, and how the flavor is, how you find the flavor. You can also, there is the pickling and preserving, like chutneys, salsas, and relishes. And of course, once you open these, you refrigerate them and use within a couple weeks. And then there is also the storage method of hanging tomatoes. And this to me is very exciting. I have just become aware of this hanging tomatoes this year. Actually have grown a few varieties. I don't even really want to say their name because I'm going to butcher them, and I think I'm too embarrassed, and I'm pulling it out of my head, and I'm probably not even saying it right, but I have the pianolos. I have both the red and the yellow, and I have a grappoli de invierno, and I also have the Anarita. And I believe I have one more, but I can't think of the name. Maybe, but these ones, they are varieties that are traditional varieties from Italy that are used to hang. And I'm not sure if it's the pianolos or the Anaritas that will hang for up to 9 months. And so this to me is completely fascinating. And there is a way, if anyone wants to see the video, it is on my Garden Fairy Botanicals. You're going to have to search way down. Actually, I'm gonna look at it again because I'm about to hang some tomatoes here in the next few days. I actually say every day I'm gonna hang tomatoes. That's my thing. I'm gonna every day I'm hanging tomatoes, and I'm just so busy I don't get to it. And so I want to watch the video again because there's a way to do it. So I will post it again on my Garden Fairy Botanicals for those that are looking, so you can see it right there. And then you just hang them in a cool area of your place, and they are made to hang. Like, can you imagine some of these varieties, their flavor will improve and intensify as they hang. And I believe the pianolos, I didn't know that the Pianello de Vesuvio, I didn't know they were storage tomatoes when I found the variety to save. I just knew that they were the oldest variety that from one thing that I saw, it said they were from the 1500s. That's just what I remember. That's what piqued my interest. And I was like, this is the oldest variety there is. I need to find these guys. And I ordered my seeds from a seed saver down in the States, and that's what started my journey. And I didn't even know they were a storage tomato at that time. All I knew is I was ordering something that was a very old heirloom. And then as I started doing research, I found they were a storage tomato. And then there's a man on Instagram, and he does a lot of work with storage tomatoes. And I'm going off topic here. Like, supposed to be talking green tomatoes, but I am talking about how to not necessarily green tomatoes. All green tomatoes can be hung. So I'm sorry, I'm giving you a little bit of wrong information. You only want to be hanging tomatoes that are made for this. Um, so that, there we go. I don't want people just to be taking any tomatoes and hanging them because I'm not sure that would work. Now, I also thought about making tomato powder. I like to dehydrate things, and I thought about, like, can you dehydrate and grind up green tomatoes? And I wanted to know some recipes, like if this could happen. And so dehydrated green tomato powder can be a versatile ingredient in the kitchen, adding a slightly tangy, slightly acidic flavor to various recipes, and it works as a flavor enhancer, thickener, and nutrient boost for many dishes. And so here are some recipes for using green tomato powder. There's a green tomato powder spice rub, and this can be complementing meats or roasted vegetables. And you basically have 2 tablespoons of green tomato powder, 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, ground black pepper, salt, cumin, and chili powder. And you can use this as a dry rub on meats, tofus, or vegetables for grilling, roasting, or baking. There's also a green tomato powder soup base, and this makes an excellent base for soups and adds a bright, tangy layer of flavor. Then there is a tangy green tomato salad dressing, and you take 1 tablespoon of green tomato powder, olive oil, apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, Dijon mustard, and salt and pepper. There is green tomato, which is a tomato paste substitute. And in recipes calling for a concentrated tomato powder, concentrated tomato paste, green tomato powder can be a unique replacement. They can be used in sauces, soups, and stews where tomato paste is needed, and you can adjust the quantity as desired for the intensity. Now, this one is very different. A green tomato powder bread. You can add green tomato powder to bread to add color, flavor, and a unique twist on the classic bread. It's basically your bread recipe with 1 tablespoon of green tomato powder in there. There is a green tomato powder seasoning for popcorn or snacks. You can also lightly sprinkle it over your popcorn or onto roasted chickpeas. That's interesting. And so I was just wanting to know some other ways to use green tomatoes, and there could be a green tomato ketchup. And so you're basically making your recipe for ketchup with green tomatoes. Now, if that's good, like what a great way to preserve, like what a great way to stop some of this food waste. Because I don't know about my listeners, but I put a lot of green tomatoes into the compost every year. They go bad. Because I don't know what to do with them. So if I could be making these into ketchup and it's something that I like, wow. And especially as we go deeper into the grand solar minimum and things aren't ripening, like if we're not converting to some of these short season tomatoes fast enough, or there's an early frost coming and we're sitting with this glut of green tomatoes, it really is going to make sense to have some recipes under our belt of things that we know that we'll like, that we can get it in a pot. There's nothing I like better than bringing stuff in from the garden, getting it into a big pot, cooking it, and getting it into jars, because then you know you've got some food for the winter. So that green tomato ketchup, it's really appealing to me. And I'm not sure if I should maybe do that as a project this week. Make some tomato green tomato ketchup and let everyone know how that works, because that could be delicious. And what an amazing thing to have on the shelf. It's only good if you eat it. I don't know if too many of my listeners are canners and they preserve things. And I've done a lot of preserving. Well, I pretty much started canning in about 2013. And so I've gotten really excited about some things. I still even have, I will admit, there are things that I've canned back in 2014 that I've never even eaten. They just don't, I just don't want to eat them. I have some of these sometimes I make these strange recipes, and I even have some uh, I can't remember. I think I made it in 2020, maybe even 2021. But I had so many blueberries this one summer, and I was making blueberry everything, preserving blueberry everything. Well, all the regular blueberry stuff like blueberry sauce and blueberry jams and blueberry preserves, those mostly have all been eaten. But I have this one recipe, and it's savory, and it's blueberry thyme. So, I just don't know what to do with it. So there's things like that. It's like I have some canning that I won't touch. So this isn't something like, I mean, it's only good if you're going to eat it. So making a whole bunch of this green tomato ketchup, if I'm going to make it and then it's just going to sit, in 10 years, I'm going to be looking at that going, I remember when I made all this green tomato ketchup, like, and there it just sits. Well, that does no good. Now, there's also this recipe and this isn't a preserving recipe, but it is a green tomato gazpacho. And so it's kind of an odd, the thing that's odd about this is it says that it's a refreshing cold soup that's perfect for warm weather. However, by the time you have your green tomatoes, it's cold weather. So this doesn't make sense at all. But I found that recipe. It's a little bit strange. There's also green tomato breaded cutlets, and you take green tomatoes and you slice them thickly, a quarter cup of flour, salt, and then you take some milk and then breadcrumbs or cornmeal, And so that sort of sounds like fried green tomatoes to me. And you can, with the fried green tomatoes or these cutlets, you can make them into a sandwich. And actually, I do believe I have done that before. I have fried tomatoes in some different way. I do remember eating a sandwich like that, and it was delicious, actually. Now I have a recipe for green tomato salsa or pico de gallo. And this is just basically you're swapping out your red tomatoes for green ones, and it will make a bright green tart twist. And that's something that would be good to do now as you have your green tomatoes. You can use a small red onion, a jalapeno, cilantro, lime juice, and salt. And now that's to be eating fresh. Maybe if you look it up, you can find a canning recipe for that. And this next recipe, um, I could not ever see myself having this ever. Like green smoothies, I went through that phase and I got into the green smoothies for a while. But this is a green tomato smoothie, and it has 1 to 2 green tomatoes, a small apple, half a cucumber, quarter cup of spinach, lemon juice, and water or coconut water. Very interesting. There's a green tomato curry, which we already looked at that already. We already looked at the green tomato pasta sauce. I've got some repeat recipes here. And now I wanted to look at, especially for my friend, because she said that she has a lot of the green cherry tomatoes that are not ripened. So how can they be used? And some of the ways I found to put those away are pickled green cherry tomatoes, and there's a pickling recipe here. Then there are roasted green cherry tomato pasta. And so roasting brings out the sweetness in green cherry tomatoes, making them a great pasta topping. And you take 2 cups of the green cherry tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, salt and pepper, fresh basil or oregano, and you will toss the green tomatoes with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Roast them for 20 to 25 minutes until the tomatoes soften and caramelize slightly, and then toss the roasted tomatoes with pasta and garnish with fresh herbs. I'm kind of surprised there's not a bunch of garlic in there. Like, I would be adding a whole bunch of garlic. There's also, you can make the green cherry tomatoes into a salsa verde. You can also do green cherry tomato skewers. And by grilling them, it will add a unique smoky taste that you can add to salads or appetizers. So you're going to be threading the green cherry tomatoes onto skewers, optionally adding basil or mozzarella. Brush with olive oil and season with salt and pepper, and grill for 2 to 3 minutes per side until slightly charred. There's also a green cherry tomato relish and a green cherry tomato tart. You can make a savory tart with the slight sweetness and acidity of the green cherry tomatoes. And you need a prepared pie crust, 1 cup of green cherry tomatoes halved, half a cup of shredded cheese, and chopped basil. And you're going to place the pie crust in a tart pan, sprinkle the cheese on the crust, then arrange the tomatoes on top, season with salt, pepper, and basil, and bake until the crust is golden and the tomatoes are tender. So I now wanted to look at sort of what is the difference between green tomatoes and storage tomatoes. And they do have, well, they both serve different purposes and they have distinct characteristics. So green tomatoes are unripened tomatoes of any variety, usually harvested before the frost or at the end of the growing season. They can be any size from cherry to beefsteak and are firm with a tangy, slightly sour flavor. Their firmer texture and tartness makes them ideal for pickling, frying, salsas, and other recipes where a bit of acidity complements the dish. And green tomatoes are often more acidic and less sweet than ripened tomatoes. And this offers a unique flavor that works well in savory applications. Storage tomatoes, typically, there are certain varieties like the long keeper tomatoes, and they are they're bred to ripen more slowly and can be stored for weeks or even months under cool, dry conditions. And they're harvested mature, particularly ripened, but are not fully ripe at the time of picking. And as they ripen off the vine, and so sorry, I don't know why it says that. Their storage tomatoes generally are not harvested when they're mature. I've been with some of the storage tomatoes I've been saving the seed from. I did pick them when they were fully mature because the seeds will be the best at that time. I still have a lot of them that are in different areas. And the ones that I picked that were fully mature, the fully either really red or really yellow when I harvested them, they all started to go bad really quick. I still have a lot of the varieties that I picked immature, and they seem to be doing a lot better. So storage tomatoes, I think there must be some key to them that you really, if you're going to be putting them into storage, you don't want them to be fully mature. So they're not fully ripe at the time of picking, but I guess they're mature as in size. And as they ripen off the vine, storage tomatoes develop a more traditional tomato sweetness and flavor, making them suitable for raw or cooked dishes where ripe tomato flavor is preferred. And from what I have been learning in my research, there are some storage tomatoes that are much better for eating fresh. And then there are some storage tomatoes that are solely for cooking. They cannot really be eaten fresh. And these tomatoes are stored in a cool, dark place between 10 degrees and 13 degrees Celsius to slow the ripening, allowing for fresh tomatoes to be enjoyed well after the main harvest season. So the key differences in the purpose between green tomatoes is that they are often picked when unripe for specific culinary uses, and storage tomatoes are intended to ripen gradually for extended fresh use. The flavor of green tomatoes are tangy and acidic, and the flavor of storage tomatoes develop to a sweeter, ripe tomato flavor. The texture of green tomatoes are firm and hold up well in cooking, and storage tomatoes soften as they ripen, making them better for fresh use or cooked dishes that benefit from softer texture. And both types are great for extending the tomato season, but green tomatoes bring a distinctive tartness, while storage tomatoes gradually provide a ripe tomato experience long into winter. And so there we go, everyone. I know I have it all sort of mumble jumbled. I do realize I should have started with some information first, but when I started doing my research, I was just so excited to look at the recipes first, and I should have shifted things around as I brought in the information. And so those people that didn't listen to the end and just they got the beginning with just the recipes, I'm sure they're missing out on some of that information if they wanted to hear it. So there we go. I hope everyone's kind of motivated to do some different things with their green tomatoes. And if you have, maybe you even have a favorite recipe, or maybe you're going to try one of these recipes, or even look for some different ones that you can find and incorporate them into your meals this week. I would love to hear, like, if you leave a comment below, or shoot me an email and let me know, and let's figure out how we can use up some of these green tomatoes that we're surrounded with. Okay, I will talk to you guys next week, and I will see you in the garden. Not harvesting green tomatoes, but maybe putting them into jars.